This is the Criterion Creeps podcast, and tonight we're talking about Throne of Blood from 1957, directed by Akira Kurosawa. The tagline, RJ, for this film, from the creator of Rashomon and Akira.
Oh, not Seven Samurai?
That's what they...
Has that not happened yet? Or
I guess not. I guess
for real,
not.
Though, or did they just not realize that?
It hasn't come out yet.
Oh, okay.
So the synopsis from a Letterboxd. Returning to their lord's castle, samurai warriors Wasizu and Miki are waylaid by a spirit who predicts their futures. When the first part of the spirit's prophecy comes true, Wasizu's scheming wife, Asaji, presses him to speed up the rest of the spirit's prophecy by murdering his lord and usurping his place. Director Akira Kurosawa's resetting of William Shakespeare's Macbeth in feudal Japan is one of his most acclaimed films. So, hey folks, I'm just going to say that I'm going to re-anglicize the names of these characters as, Macbeth and Banquo and Lady Macbeth. So I'm not having to say Wasizu and Miki.
It sounds like appropriation, Jarrett. I don't know if I'm on board with that.
Oh, I'm reappropriating. So, yes.
Is that worse or is that better?
It's taking it back.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'd like to distance myself from the opinions of Jarrett Duncan. And, this is a character I play for a podcast. So there you go. That's out there now. And continue on with whatever you were about to do.
All right. So I've only seen this movie once before. I think it was probably 2002. Watched it with a Patreon of the show, Lawrence, our friend Aby, who had actually we watched his DVD of it. Is
that a Patreon goal to watch a movie with you?
Ooh, no. I don't,
it should be.
No one wants that.
Why not?
And you know what, RJ?
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't seen this movie in 2002 when I watched this. I thought it was awesome.
Cool.
Part of that reason was because I love Macbeth.
You've mentioned before.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Why is that?
Well, we'll get there. I'm pretty sure, back when we did those Larry Oliver Shakespeare movies.
Sure.
I probably brought up that Macbeth was my favorite of the batch, and how I think going into these movies, being familiar with the source material, particularly Shakespearean stuff, it's probably good to have at least read the play and know it when you're watching the movies, because then it's
I've never read it.
Okay, so I'll be curious what you think about this movie when we get there. So yeah, I was always going to have an open heart to this Macbeth business. So yeah, at the time though, when I watched this would have been my introduction to weird Japanese ladies without eyebrows and blackened teeth. That was a thing that I was like, "What's up with that?"
There's no real story. It's
it's what it is, and you're like,
just there.
Then you find out later in life, you're like, oh, it's like this eggplant blackening thing that apparently was really sexy. What
do you mean was?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to judge you or anything.
Don't step out on any toes here, Jerry. You don't know what people's preferences are.
Do you like your mouth to look like just a gaping black hole?
Well, Jared, I don't know if you know this, but attraction is relative. And if you're not, if you find anything unattractive, you're on the wrong side of history, friend.
You know what I find unattractive?
What's that?
I just want to say that I think the DVD cover for this is not so great.
Let me. Is that different from the Letterboxd cover?
It's the same image. That kind of.
Oh, the red and white
with the kind of not animated drawing, but very not even kind of
geometrical.
Stylized. Yeah, I don't like that image very much, and it's been the one for a long, long time. But when you actually look it up too, there isn't really an iconic Throne of Blood poster, even the Japanese one. It's very Japanese of its era, super busy, lots of graphics. It's not super appealing either, but yeah, I've never. This one's I don't know. I probably was fine with it at one point, but looking at it now, it seems very dated. It feels like somebody trying out different stuff in their photoshops
in their garage.
Yeah.
You know what I think would be a cooler cover is the old witch doctor when they're just standing in with all those skulls. That'd be a cool cover for this thing.
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool, dude. Or maybe just like.
I mean, if a
Black
title like
Heat,
that,
Black
it feels like it's
Eggplant
like a
Heat.
metal album.
Throne of Blood?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, baby. That's like a Slayer song. almost.
Throne of blood, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that again?
So, or how about the Japanese title, Spiderweb Castle?
That's pretty cool. Those are both very, very cool titles. Why did they change it?
I mean, maybe Throne of Blood sounds a little bit more elegant. Spiderweb Forest is like
Spiderweb Castle? That sounds
yeah,
wicked.
yeah.
I love that.
I know, but it kind of feels like it sounds like a different type of movie.
Meh.
Yeah.
Change it back, you cowards.
So anyway,
Yeah, sure.
Macbeth.
Yes, what about Macbeth?
I think it's my favorite Shakespeare story.
Controversial.
I don't think it's that. I think a lot of people, even like if there's people who don't like Shakespeare, I think they do like Macbeth because it's easy to get. Maybe
What about Hamlet?
it's a bit more complex, RJ. A little bit
Well,
more
I mean,
complicated.
Hamlet's got that Lion King connection. It's got that Sons of Anarchy connection.
Mm-hmm.
What does Macbeth have? Macbeth?
It's just about fucking violence, and
Just
revenge,
fucking?
and just messed up people. Even though it's like actually not even the most violent. It's because all the violence, most of the violence actually happens off camera.
That's true. Hey, I want to change my story. I'm pretty sure I did read Macbeth because thinking back now, Macbeth is part of like English 20 or English 30 like curriculum. So I'm
20.
pretty sure that I'm pretty sure I got Macbeth in there.
Maybe.
Or
So-
an excerpt
Yeah.
at the most.
Part of the thing too was reading the play and then also watching. In school, we watched Roman Polanski's Macbeth, which was very saucy because it is a Playboy production.
Sure.
Which, of course, my favorite anecdote there is Penthouse was like, "Well, shit, Playboy's doing classy literature. Let's do Caligula." That was their response.
Oh, was Caligula a Penthouse film?
Sure was.
I don't think I knew that.
Yep.
Did you talk about that?
I haven't had the opportunity yet. But,
See, it is a Jarrett pick, Caligula.
it absolutely.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah, so I for whatever reason I had just never rewatched this. I've had the DVD for a really long time, and of course I popped in my DVD and was watching it, and then I went, you know what? I bet you this looks better on the Criterion channel because it's going to be like at least like 720p, and yeah, it definitely less compression, a little bit more detail. So I watched it that way, and it made me very sad looking at my giant wall of DVDs on the wall, being like, oh yeah, these are all substandard now. They do in a pinch, you know. If I didn't have any access, they'd be fine. But knowing that there's better out there, and this is also on Blu-ray, I'm 99% certain. Yeah, I probably have to rebuy it. Because why would I rebuy a movie, RJ? Because this movie still pretty great.
What?
I would say
Jarrett Duncan's a fan?
Yeah, I'm a fan.
Wow, I never thought I'd see the day.
Wow. Well, so for me, this is that same level as High and Low for top tier Kurosawa.
Up to High and Low even?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
But you're a Macbethian.
I'm a Macbethian. Yeah. So I'm like totally the target audience for a Macbeth adaptation of this caliber. So where to begin with my general thoughts of this? So this movie opens up with these awesome foreboding shots of the landscape, and there's this like the Japanese voice talking over the foreboding past and a castle that's no longer there, and it's like, yes, this is all I want. And then
They did it, those bastards. They did it.
It seems like there's something about like maybe the Macbeth story that is kind of feels like post-apocalyptic, because I'll talk about the 2015 Fassbender Macbeth later, because it is.
Did you watch that?
I did.
Oh, I thought you were saving that for Polanski.
Oh no, you said that. I had other plans.
I said that?
Yeah.
Okay, well I'll watch that during the Polanski one then.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
Several years from now, you can get on that bad boy, or maybe I'll save you the time. Don't.
Point taken.
Yeah. So yeah, it has this movie has so much atmosphere to it. Like all the stuff, all the environment and exterior stuff. It's real. It's grim and smoky and dead trees. You don't see a lot of like dead bodies. It's not like The Devils where you have like, skeletons up in the wheel and down these paths, but it's got that same vibe, which I'm very appreciative of. And then we get probably maybe one of the weaker parts of the movie, I'd say, a series of info dumps of what's going on, where like we have our King Duncan. He's sitting around with his like sweet samurai outfits. Everyone's like in their samurai garb, all positing as like one man's come running to report that one of the forts has fallen, and then he gets he reports, he gets taken away to tend to his wounds, and then another rider comes up and is like, "Hey, our Macbeth dude, he's coming. He's going to save the day, and he's going to fight this, and they're going to have a standoff." And then another guy comes, "Hey, we're going to do this." It's kind of funny, but it's also very true to the spirit of the play, where like you don't see these big battles happening. You hear about them after the fact. It's reported on, and it's because it's not about the big wars, the skirmishes, the general violence. It's about kind of the dramatic moments that are happening in between, which it makes it kind of a unique story, because often like that's the problem kind of with the 2015 remake, is it's like it wants to show like it wants to slow down in big like 300-ish battle sequences that like also recall such classics as Mandy and way too much Mandy vibes. So not a fan of that. So yeah, one of the more interesting things here for me is taking the Western Shakespeare of Scotland and transposing it to Eastern Asia, where you have these like weird samurai helmets and formalities, and it works really, really well. Like, it's just, I mean, that's kind of the Kurosawa thing, is like kind of taking these Western stories like High and Low or Seven Samurai, taking these
Magnificent Seven, you mean?
Yeah, no, I'm just like listing like different genre
no,
types.
I know
like,
I was
like,
being a dink.
Yeah, and like Yojimbo, like it's like he's doing cowboys and Indians, and he's just taking the Western and putting them in different trappings, and it works great in a way so much that influences people to make Westerns that are remakes of Japanese movies that were like Westerns. Yep. Yeah, so I mean...
Yeah, it is. It's seamless.
This one, though, feels more alien, and it doesn't feel like anyone was watching this and being like, yeah, I want to make something like Throne of Blood. Because you can't, because it's like so unusual, and because it's a very Japanese take on it, and it strips out a lot of some of the information that maybe is unnecessary when you're doing an adaptation, which is great, because sometimes you don't have to be so reverential of the source material. You can toss some things out, and it'll work just fine. Yeah, I
agree completely. I could talk about that, or I can just wait until it's my turn.
Okay. Well, I'm almost done. Kind of my general notes here.
Sure.
So yeah, our boys Macbeth and his best bud Banquo, they go to get their accommodations from King Duncan and are waylaid by witches in the form of a witch in the Labyrinth Forest.
Yes.
It's just like so much atmosphere, RJ. So much.
So much fog.
Yeah, and we got spooky voiceover dubbing.
Hell yeah, baby.
Which is like very effective, because you have this like kind of male spooky voice, and it's like kind of slowed down.
A what kind of spooky voice?
It's like this male weird voice over to this like female-ish. So it's like this disconnect. It's like this androgynous, weird, like otherworldly spirit. Disjunctive.
Sure.
Who lays it all out. Says, hey, this is going to happen. You're going to become the lord of this, and then one day you'll be king, and you're going to be lucky, but your luck's going to extend over a long period of time, and then your son will become king. And it's like, oh, cool. And they have a laugh. Well, actually, before they have a laugh about it, they go through this like couple-minute long jaunt through fog. Oh, shit. The other there, one of the funniest bits that I was thinking about is before they get to the witch, they're riding through the woods, and they're like, oh, God, the woods. They're making us get lost. And then they just like, the one guy starts shooting, like our Banquo stand-in. He starts just shooting arrows at nothing. And Macbeth's like charging. And he's like, they're just charging at things. I'm like, I'm imagining the like modern day equivalent of being lost in the woods. A man just firing his gun off.
A gun into the air.
Running.
I thought that was pretty funny too, where it's like we can't get lost by witches. We'll take care of this, and then they're like, and they just fight the sky. Yeah. And then, it's a very aggressively male approach to the situation.
Yeah. So they get their prophecy. They go, oh, that's weird. And then they kind of they're kind of laying around the embankments. Like, it seems like they're like maybe 15 minutes away from the castle, but they decide to like take a load off. And then they're like, we don't even know if we might be lords. And then they go, and then they go look and they make their way to there. Go, let's find out if we're lords. And sure enough, they are. And we get these great reaction shots as they're being awarded their titles. And then we do a jump cut to like kind of where they're now at their new at their forts, their personal forts. And then we're introduced to our Lady Macbeth, who is like, I love this interpretation because she's always kind of like. Always with these straight, like he's like, oh, well, we'll do it this way. She's like, no. And she's like, no.
No,
Yeah.
we won't be doing that.
That's the wrong way to think about that. He's probably already thinking, he's trying to outthink you. We should probably do this. Like she's just feeding them lines. Because like, we don't even get the moment where like she's been informed about this like witch business. She's just like, it's off camera, but she's already like gone to thinking about it. There's no big scene where she's like, unsex me, spirit, so I'm allowed to do what I'm capable of and to make these things come true. There's no moment like that. It's like I kind of love that selection because it's just like, no, she's just like, she's also this ambitious person rather than like who has to like, I need the will of the spirits or like think that like a spirit is taking this away from me. And yeah, it complicates the story a little bit more in a good way.
A little bit.
So, yeah, you know what? One thing leads to another, and it's all about the scheming, killing kings. Yes, it is. Drugging people, blaming them for it. They run away. They look guilty. It's the Macbeth story. And I'll hand it off to you, RJ. I've talked enough at this point. I really like this movie. What do you think here?
You're handing it off to me? Jarrett.
Yeah.
Throwing a blood. More like throwing a shit. No, I'm just kidding. It's funny, though, every time, right? Every time. I'm sure there's a lot of Kurosawa fans out there, probably a lot of Hidden Fortress fans that are like, oh, yes, classic jokes about our beloved movies. But they're the most respectable fans. They're like, yeah, we can handle a good joke here and there. Throwing a Blood, Jarrett, is a good show. I like it. It's real good. This is first time watch for me. As I've mentioned before, I like Kurosawa. I mean, there are a few things that I think maybe underperform, but in the pantheon of the Kurosawa movies, things like Redbeard, it's like, you know what? That's fine. They don't all have to be all-star bangers. But I think Throne of Blood is real good for a few reasons. A few reasons.
So I always think of like a few. That's like three. That's like 3 reasons.
For 3 reasons. Reason number 1. You ever seen The Fanatic with John Travolta? That's basically Throne of Blood remade. Whoa. I'm on Letterboxd again. I just saw that poster. I got to get off of here because it's persuading me. Okay, I just got you up here now. Okay, Throne of Blood. Throne of Blood is very good. I'm probably not as big of a Macbeth fan as you are. I know you're a big Macbeth dude. I do like the Macbeth story. If I had to pick a favorite Shakespeare story, I probably wouldn't. I don't know, like Macbeth, Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet. Like, what are even some other ones? Nobody gives a shit about Midsummer Night's Dream, but you know, whatever. Shakespeare. So I'm not as big of a Macbeth fan, but I do think I know why you like it. And there's some big things that I think you and me both share an appreciation for. Number 1, the ghost story. I think the ghosts or prophets involved in the Macbeth story, like the 3 witches, it's really cool. It's this element of fantasy that doesn't feel forced in. It's like not pushed in, and it's not really out of place either. Like, it's so practical in its presentation. It's like, yeah, sure. Why not have these prophets in here? It's not like anything crazy. It's not people that have like dragon skin or anything like goofy like that. Seems realistic. Sure. Throw those witches in there. So that part of it's really cool. And then I think Macbeth is, I know you're a big fan, Jarrett. I think Macbeth is one of the ultimate sad bastard movies. Not because of how he is. Like, he's very confident. He's a Chad in certain ways. But I think the story of Macbeth is kind of a sad bastard tale. And it's like, I'm sure there are very descriptive and detailed deconstructions of Macbeth and the drive of ambition and this and that. So I'm not going to attempt to do that, but I do think that the pursuit of what they do and the inevitable and unavoidable failure of Macbeth is kind of a sad bastard story. I do also think that there is an interesting kind of idea that is presented here where there's lots of talk of ambition, but I also think that there is a different thing at play there where it's ambition versus perception of like perception of influence and what you're being told and like what you can be convinced of. And like that's an obvious thing there too, because Lady Macbeth, she's a big push to the influence, but it's like the idea, like all Macbeth has is this witch in the woods who's like, you're going to do some big stuff. And he's like, oh, okay. And then one of the things happens. He's like, oh, it's all true. And it's like buying into hype. The biggest thing I would pull from that is think about like college level sports all-stars, like the football college players, the basketball players, and like NBA, NFL, these people who basically their entire life are told that they're the best that there is. I think this is a completely like a big tangent, but I've noticed there's a lot of things with like celebrity athletes and especially these like really big name people where their whole life they've been told that they're the best that there ever was, and then when you see them talk, people are like, oh, look at his attitude, and it's like did you not think that that's how that was going to happen? This guy or girl who's told their whole life that they're the absolute best, it's like you don't think that they would eventually buy into that? And I mean, it's not just sports. I mean, that can fall into politics, vis-a-vis, case in point, current day. So I think that was a big tangent, but my big thing was it's like ambition and then it's like perception of that, where it's even just being told things kind of influences people enough where it's like, I'm going to go do this. I think that's the heart of Macbeth, Jarrett. Throne of Blood, I like quite a bit because of a few things. One of the big things I like is that I think it gets like right to it. It doesn't like waste your time in the sense where you get this like prophecy and then you see a few things of things come into play and then it just goes to it. Like you get the Lord coming to visit. And you're like, oh, is something going to happen? But then in the next scene, it's just him, and
the paranoia begins because it's been curious how there's like in the two different iterations I watched where the king is killed is different from the original source to Throne of Blood to the Kurzel Macbeth, because it's like he's killed in, was it Isendor, the castle itself? Isendor, no, that's Lord of the Rings. Oh God, Scottish place. The king. I'm blanking out on the name of it in the play, but so that's where he actually is supposed to be killed. But in this, he's actually killed in the fort that Macbeth is in charge of. Yeah, because he's like out on a hunting trip. And but well, he is. I mean, he was. I mean, everything's like I think on the up and up, but it's the paranoia of Macbeth that's being fed to him. It's like, oh, he's scared to do this because your best friend's already ratted you out, and this is what's going to be. And like, get the man out! Oh God! Like there's always like ramping up how just like suspicious he is of everything, and that's kind of one of the other things is like. It's not even like maybe the ambition thing is such a crutch sometimes I think in the discussion of this story, because it's like sometimes it's like it is like he's more undone by like his suspicions and then acting on those things to keep his power rather than like, because he doesn't seem like particularly ambitious. He's like always like, oh well, you know, maybe this is the best thing, and then he gets talked into it again. He's like, yeah, and then once he gets the power, then he does everything he can do to hold on to it, but he's always kind of like, well, I did enough now. I'll clean my hands of that. But it's like, no, now Banquo knows, and now now what, you're just going to give this over to his family? He didn't do anything for it. I didn't get blood on my hands just for this to be given up so quickly. And so it's like, yeah, because you know he's going to do the same thing to you, and it's going to backfire. And you're like, oh yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe I should hire some goons to just take him out. So. There's always these, so that scene where in that, it's like at that location, and then in Kurzel Macbeth, it's just like out on the battlement, like in a tent. And
That's boring.
It makes sense. I mean, it's a more realistic depiction of it, where it's like this is how the story would actually probably play out in a realistic way. But you know what? No, sometimes you want a little bit of the drama, a little bit of the scope to be different than be like, "Yep, here's a bunch of Highlanders with the Braveheart face paint."
Well, that's
and it's like, hey, don't you want to see Michael Fassbender's like shredded bod?
Not really.
Yeah, well, you will.
Yeah, not really, but that's what I mean too, where the prophecy with the witches and all that stuff, it's a fantasy thing, but I think it's just the right amount of it, where it's like, oh, okay, I'm into this. And I think Throne of Blood shows that well too, where when he's like tripping out and he's getting even more paranoid and he starts to see ghosts, that I think that aspect's really cool. I think they show that, like, they show it in a really nice way. And it's kind of like what I was saying. So I think this movie doesn't waste your time. It presents the things, like the important bits. It's like, here's this, here's that, there's this. And this is what's important. To
comment about the ghost thing, because we don't go back to it. Some filmcraft talk. How Kurosawa uses the camera. How like you only ever see the ghost of Banquo the one time. But then it's always roving around, and it's like intentionally leaving him out of the frame. And so we always see Mifune responding to the ghost, and we know that it's there in his mind, and everyone else, like, you're not exactly sure if they're seeing it. And then when it pans kind of back over, you're like, he's intentionally kind of leaving it out of sight of the audience too, because you're not supposed to see it. And it's a really clever thing, because all you're now focusing on is the face of the audience and Mifune's face, where he's like rambling to himself, and then Lady Macbeth's like, ha, he's so drunk. He gets like this all the time. It's like, well, that's terrifying.
He always does this. Oh, this guy that has just been appointed our lord of all of like the land. He's just like a weird drunk who freaks out.
Yeah,
terrific.
An angry booze hound.
Just like us. Hey, Jarrett.
One of us.
Sure. Yeah, so I thought that was awesome. And then another thing about like the ghost scenes that's really good is there's a really well like depicted symmetry and all this stuff. Like there's a few shots where, like, there's the one where it's the ghost kneeling and or not even that, where I think Macbeth, Toshiro Mifune, kills that dude, and then he's like backing up, and it's just everything's so symmetrical. It just looks really nice. It looks pretty. It does.
There's that also really awesome bit where when Macbeth and Banquo, after they've kind of confronted the spirit, and then like it kind of like walks off, and then they go to chase after, and the camera goes forward after them, but then they stop because they're like, we don't know where it went, and then they turn around, and they're like basically off screen, the production crew have like taken the house apart and like pulled it apart, and they walk back through it, and it's just gone. It's like, oh, it's so nice.
Very nice. Yeah, there's a lot of like film craft, as you said, fine art, artisanal.
Actually, you know what movie this reminds me of in some ways? Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, Cocteau is like,
it's got some nice flourishes like that.
It's got some like fantasy elements to it, and it's yeah, it strips down this sort of like kind of like at this point, like it's almost, at what point does Shakespeare stories kind of fall into like that mythic range where it's like you're like, it's not like this, it's not a historical drama, but it's like kind of like, oh yeah, no, this is like kind of like a myth more than anything else.
Yeah, it's cool stuff, isn't it, Jarrett?
Cool stuff,
man.
Do you have a few things more to talk about, RJ?
No, I really like the big cumbersome back banners that these guys all wear. It reminded me of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, with the Dungan people.
How about that centipede banner?
Yeah, unpleasant. And then I was going to say,
is there more in like creepy insect?
No, there isn't. Not on the face of the earth is there a creepier insect. But there's that, and then I liked the arrow play at the end. You know what it reminded me of was that Wolverine Ronin story, which I'm sure was taking some inspiration from Kurosawa and all those things.
Probably just a little.
But I like that. I like those arrows. It looked like Toshiro Mifune was getting hit by arrows for real, too. So like I don't know about you, but when I was watching that, I was like, they really shot that guy. Like maybe they gave him a breastplate or something, but I'm pretty sure they shot arrows into him for real.
So
did you get that vibe?
It looks great.
It looks like it.
Yeah.
Kind of.
The one thing that I was just one of the other things that they kind of changed between, well, they didn't really change it, but between the two versions. So one of the things they did keep it like there's like in traditional Macbeth, Macduff is the one who kills Macbeth. And because there's like the false promise from the witches, or it's like the misleading prophecy. It's like you'll never lose a battle until the forests march on Dunsany, and there it is. And he's like, haha, and then he gets all arrogant because like forests don't move. And then the other thing is like you'll be killed by a man that was not born of a woman. He's like, haha, I'm safe. There's no man like that exists. But then it's like, oh, I was born from like a cesarean, essentially. And it's like, shit, he didn't come out of a vagina. I'm fucked. And
oh dear, Jarrett.
But then you get the two versions. You get kind of a mix of that here, because in Throne of Blood, you have like that really, I don't know, beautiful image of the swaying trees moving as he's looking through the little porthole, and he sees like the soldiers who have cut down the wood like the traditional way, and they're using it as cover, and they're moving forward, which is like so ridiculous. Like it's just like this kind of bizarre idea. I'm like, that seems like a lot of effort, but it's like very smart, because you're like, well, the woods in front of this castle are a labyrinth, and our men will just get lost and waylaid, so we might as well just chop it all down, and we'll just march our way straight through, which is brilliant. In Kurzel's Macbeth, the solution there is they burn the woods down, and then, RJ, you have Macbeth who takes a handful of the ash of the trees coming and says, "The woods were marching on me." Boom.
That's a little too metaphorical for me, I think.
I mean, it's probably like, but it's like, but it's more ridiculous. I mean, in a literal sense, like a bunch of people like chopping down woods and then traveling with woods, like trees in front of them.
I kind of like that though.
Right, I know. But it looks in this movie, it looks gorgeous. So you get this amazing shot rather than like it looks like summer of 2018 here in Creepsville conclusion where you get a big sword battle like an orange palette, like Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah. Your favorite show, I think, right?
Yeah. Yes. So
yeah, I agree. That shot is wicked cool, and I can see where the burnt forest ash stuff would come into play. Yeah. Sure, whatever. Fine. And
the movie just ends like he's dead.
Yes, it does.
And like, hey, order's restored. Flarin. Banquo's son, Florian, or his son, is like, or whatever his son is going to be. You're going to be king now, and
why not?
The handsome boy, and it's just like, but then we get apocalyptic. This is the story of doom, and there was a castle here once. You get that, and it's like, yep, in and out, and then end. Movie's out.
Good why not, Jarrett?
Succinct.
What else are you going to do?
It's surprising actually calling this movie succinct because it's not super short, but yeah, it flows well for me.
Well, I just think it's like I said, I think it just cuts out a lot of that middle shit where they're like, all right, we got this set up and now we're going to do this. There you go. Boom. Hey, bada bing.
Exactly. It's like exactly what Kurosawa said, I think, in his book of interviews. Bada bing.
Hey, Akira Kurosawa, what were you trying to achieve with Throne of Blood? Hey, bada boom, bada bing. No. Wow.
It's like,
and then it's
really getting into this Owen Wilson territory now.
Well, I was trying to do that like hushed applause where it's like, oh, wow. I can't get that sound right. It's been brought up before. You know what? It doesn't matter. My point stands, and I feel good. Jarrett. Yeah, it's a good show. Good show, my man.
Want to hear about some people who hate this movie?
Yeah, why not?
All right,
what are they even going to say about this?
Well, you know? Rembrandt Q. Pumpernickel, who's a
repeat offender,
half a star.
Wow.
Part of my 20 least favorite film viewing experiences list. Count me among the few that far prefer Akira Kurosawa's modern films to his period pieces, and Throne of Blood has all of those films' worst qualities turned up to 11. Obvious and broad themes, histrionic performances, and bland static composition. I remember about 2 moments from this film, and everything else is a dull blur. Skip this one and jump straight to Ran, in my opinion. It's got all the same elements, but with an emotional register and a gorgeous look.
Remember at Hugh Pumpernickel? Pumpernickel is a podcaster, Jarrett.
Mm-hmm.
In their bio, it says, "This is a fucking great podcast," end quote. My friend Bucky about my podcast when he was on it. So, I mean, if you want to follow it, apparently it's called Loose Cannons. You can also go to fancyfilmfellows.com. They have many ratings, many 5-star films, many half-star films, and films that it's just like,
this is a half-star.
Yeah, like other half-star films are like True Lies, King Kong, the original, Manhattan, The Mummy, the Brendan Fraser hit. Like, I don't really understand any of these half-star ratings. Nausicaa, Valley of the Wind, half-star? You fucking kidding me? You kidding me, Jarrett?
You want to hear about Cali?
Yeah, I guess.
1 star.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what old white men say this movie is not good.
What?
Please stop trying to convince me that these films invented cinema, because they didn't. Was literally forced, these are all caps, to watch this as a Macbeth adaptation, and I'm not happy about it. The Lion King literally did a better as a Shakespeare adaptation than this, and those are the facts.
That's Hamlet, though. That's not Macbeth.
Well, you tell Callie that.
I will. 5-star films are pretty much exactly what you would expect. There's also things like Disney movies, Moulin Rouge, Mamma Mia, 8th Grade in the 5 stars. There's only 4 1-star reviews. One of them is Throne of Blood, and one of them is the frequently quoted Usual Suspects. So, you know, there's that. Uh-huh.
And finally, I can barely even read this person's name. Michaela Cash, 2 stars.
Michaela Cash. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, Michaela Cash. Sure,
I only looked this up so I could laugh at how bad it is. Clearly, I'm missing something.
It seems strange to say something like that, you know? Like
because they were doing something else. They were looking at their magazine, and they're looking up, and they're like, "Oh my god, this movie's so bad." And then
you know what movie I only watched to make fun of? Michaela Cash's 5-star film Baby Driver.
Ooh.
Like, why would you give that movie stinks? It stinks, Jarrett. I don't know. This person is very inactive, to be honest. They have 300 movies watched and 300 ratings. There's nothing. There's nothing here. It's nothing. This person is nothing. Michaela Cash, you're nothing. I mean, that's an opinion, not my own, but of the character I play for this podcast. So, I don't know. It's just very strange. These ratings, they don't mean anything. Home Alone, 2 stars? What are you, fucking mental? Holes, 2 stars? That's not right. Holes is a great show.
You want to hear me talk about Macbeth 2015 really quick?
Yeah, I mean, you might as well.
I might as well. So, as you know, I mean, this week, I mean, I watched a movie, in the last 10 days, I watched a movie with Jessica Chastain. I watched a movie with James McAvoy, and I was like, you know who's missing here? A little bit of Michael Fassbender.
Big dick Michael Fassbender himself.
You know, so, and I'm like, this Macbeth, it's directed by this Justin Kurzel guy. He directed that Snowtown Murders movie that I like. I should...
and Assassin's Creed.
Yeah. Not so... Look at that little giggle you gave. And so I watched this. I was prepared to like this. But, man, for a movie that's like as well shot as this is, it is so poorly constructed. The editing is so annoying in the worst, like, art house kind of ways you can imagine. Where it's just like, hey, let's just cut that. Let's just pace it this way because But you're like, if you strip this down, because at times it just feels like Game of Thrones ish stuff, where like they're trying to do this big action battle scene, and it's like they literally did this better on Game of Thrones. I mean, you have all the set and everything looks right, but just like there's no drive to it. You're just kind of dumped in this stake. Why are we doing this battle scene? Like none of this matters. Like they haven't established this, like, because I think in the original play it's like Ireland and Norway. Some thanes are involved, and they're fought back by Macbeth. And it's like, hey, we did good, but there's like a shot where like the army is slowly running toward one another, and like they're getting geared up for their big war charge, and they're cutting back to them slowly walking toward each other and like with their weapons up, and then they just bash and fight and etc. You get the realistic depictions of what happens when people are really stabbed. It's just like, yeah, we know. Who
cares?
So here's a dead baby. I guess it might be his, and they're all very sad.
You
about
never
it.
killed a baby.
Let's go put some coins on their eyes, and because it's old timey. And then the witches, they're like 3 women. But like look just like peasant women, but they got kind of like a weird like ridge on their forehead, and then they have like a little girl because little girls are spooky. But it's like, I mean, that part's good. I mean, witch's stuff is always kind of cool, but here it's like very like, yeah, no, this is the Macbeth story, but it's missing an element that you need to make it that's for something that you want to like. And this movie just like, it seems like it wants to edit around the drama and be like, just look at the aesthetics. And just, yeah, really unpleasant experience. Like it's very I don't like using the word, but it felt very pretentious. And to me, Macbeth is like one of the more unpretentious plays of Shakespeare. I don't even know if any of his stuff's necessarily pretentious, but this turns it into something like, I want to make it this way. And in the world where like Orson Welles, Kurosawa, Roman Polanski have made their mark on a Macbeth play, and then Justin Kurzel's like, yeah, it's my turn, and he makes this, and it's like no one's going to watch this at all.
Sounds shitty.
Shitty might be a little strong. It's just really underwhelming and really too long. It does not feel succinct like Kurosawa, and that might blow your minds. But yeah, you really see when you see some good movie making, and then you see this. I mean, I've seen some people like this too, and I don't know. I don't know. To me, but it's again, people also like Mandy, and that movie came to mind often watching it, where it's a lot of style over substance. And I also I have a soft spot for the Macbeth story, as it might have been said already a couple thousand times on this episode. So watching this kind of like flaccid interpretation was kind of
what?
Flaccid.
Oh. Okay. Hey Jared, if the Criterion Creeps was a Shakespearean play, what would we be?
The Tempest.
Is that sexual?
You'll always be my Caliban.
I don't know The Tempest. Is it sexual? Caliban, is that the dark side son?
After the break.
Yes.
I dispatched some ghouls to kill RJ.
And then what?
And then that's the end of the movie. It's a good one.
And then what?
I live happily ever after.
Wait a minute, The Tempest? A servant to Prospero and a savage monster? Am I Caliban or are you Caliban?
You're the Caliban.
Who are you?
Prospero.
The rightful Duke of Milan. I think you're putting too much weight into yourself, man. You must be a Hidden Fortress fan.